Celebrity voice impersonation not an endorsement.
Why go to a single furniture store when you can go to Big Sandy Superstore? Shop and compare America's top 5 mattress brands, plus Nectar and Purple. And choose from over 22,000 in-stock appliances from the top brands at the guaranteed lowest price. Or furnish the room of your dreams with a large selection of American-built furniture. With financing plans for just about anyone, there's nowhere else quite like it. Big Sandy Superstore.
This is the smell of the leftover tuna fish sandwich you left in your lunchbox over the weekend in a wimpy trash bag.
Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy!
Blech! And this is the smell of that same sandwich in a hefty, ultra-strong trash bag.
Hefty, hefty, hefty!
Ah, smell the difference? Hefty Ultra Strong has Arm & Hammer with continuous odor control, so no matter what's inside your trash, you can stay one step ahead of stinky. And for bigger jobs, try the superior strength of Hefty Large Black Bags.
Hello, good morning, angels, and welcome back to Morning Ray. I'm your host, Lan or Alana, and on today's episode, we have Carrie Dorr, the founder of Pure Barre. I'm so honored to have had the opportunity to speak with her. We discuss everything on how and why she started Pure Barre, the founding story of it, Pilates, all the hype around Pilates, her wellness rituals, her morning routine, everything about the connection between mental and physical strength, and just the overall fitness industry. We talk about everything and anything. Wellness, which you know I love, so let me just bring Carrie on. We're going to skip our opening segments today. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm really excited also for next week. We'll do another solo up. I think it's something you're definitely going to want to hear, so stay tuned for that, but here is Carrie. So I always love to start off my episodes by asking my guests 3 questions, which are, who are you, where are you from, and what is your zodiac sign?
I'm Carrie Dorr, and I'm originally from Michigan, Plymouth, Michigan, and my zodiac sign, I'm a Leo.
Oh, I'm also a Leo. When's your birthday?
July 29th. When's your birthday?
August 6th.
Oh, we're close.
Yes.
It's a great sign.
Yes, I love being a Leo. I think it's always, well, that's why you have a lion browser. We were just
Right? See? It's all coming together now.
Yes, Carrie had to download some new browser to record this episode, and it had a lion, and it's fitting.
That's right. I was actually thinking that.
Okay, so there's a Pure Barre right by me, and I always walk by it, and I always see it. I always hear so much about it. So I want to know your backstory with regards to Pure Barre. I feel like founder stories are always so interesting. Mm-hmm. So how and why did you start Pure Barre?
Well, I had been a professional dancer for 7 years through college and law school. And while I was doing that, I was also teaching a ton of group fitness. Mm-hmm. And then when I got out of law school, I started practicing law and found that I really enjoyed still teaching, group fitness at 5 a.m., at noon, at 6:30 p.m., and on the weekends. And so I saved up my money and paid off my loans and opened my first studio. And that was in Michigan in 2001. And at the time, it was really the first name was called the Pilates Institute of Birmingham, Michigan. And it was not my best attempt at branding or logo. I was, in my 20s and had no idea, but I was just super passionate about bringing this different way of working out to women, teaching in I loved teaching in the big boxes and the college campuses and apartment buildings. I used to go with my little pink jam box and teach in the apartment rec rooms. And I loved it. But I also found that, in the big box stuff that we were teaching, it wasn't necessarily the most effective programming. And they weren't really able to spend time teaching teachers how to teach. And so I opened my first studio, 600 square feet, and I had 4 reformers, 1 trap table, 10 mats for Pilates floor work, and a little ballet bar that held about 6 people. So the original studio taught it all. I taught private Pilates, I taught group reformer, and I would I'd push all the reformers out of the way and teach mat Pilates and bar. And that's really how it started.
What would you say back then was your favorite to teach? Like reformer, mat, bar?
Well, I love teaching it all, right? And they all
Yeah.
have their kind of, their superstar powers. And I think the commonality is that I enjoy teaching groups, like that
Hmm.
energy. When I had been in college and law school, like I mentioned, that professional company I toured with and choreographed for, I mean, it was really all large venue events. So parades and bowl games. And there's just so much energy created by group movement. And so for me, it didn't necessarily mean like which one was it modality wise. It
Hmm.
was just the power of the group, like group coming together, with common interest and moving together. That really still to this day is kind of my jam.
Yeah, I love training in a group setting. And I think it's because I grew up being a dancer and always learning that way and working as a team and being in that environment. I feel like, yes, I can work out alone and I can do my Pilates practice on my own or my weights or whatever it may be. But there's something just like so motivating and communal about being in a group setting and being with other individuals who are showing up for the same practice.
Yeah.
So that's honestly amazing to hear that you love that so much as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of science behind it, and there's a great piece written. I don't know what year in Scientific American, and it talks about it. Scientific American is just quite awesome, and all the pieces are really long. So if you're interested in spending some time doing it, reading it, I can share the link. But they talk about that, and they really cite more like if you think about rowing, like crew teams, that
Mm-hmm.
synchronicity of that moving. And so perhaps not in bar or Pilates, we're not as in sync as a rowing team, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that same concept of like, you know, everyone's moving together somewhat in unison, and it creates this energy that's, this intangible energy that's extremely impactful.
Yeah, it's also like I don't know. I think it's the dancer in me. It's so beautiful seeing everyone move pretty much like if everyone knows what they're doing like at the same time. Like say we're at bar and we're like all going into a plie or a releve, like all doing that together. It's like a dance almost.
Yeah. I also think it's just human nature to work a little harder when you're in a group of people than you are on
Mm-hmm.
your own. Even for those of us who are just natural diehards when it comes to working out, I think the at home movement has been wonderful, and it provides so much as far as consistency and accessibility. And the programming's gotten way better at home than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a little studio here that I opened up in January, and all these women coming in, had been working out at home through COVID, and they're like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
What I was doing at home was not really working, because like I said, I think it's just human nature that you're like, oh, I'm gonna press pause and throw those dishes in the dishwasher, or
Mm-hmm.
check that one email, and so you don't have the same sort of flow, and flow leads to intensity, and so therefore I think the studio working out together offers a lot.
Yeah. As a business owner, how would you say like the pandemic has like affected the fitness industry? Like I feel like definitely at first like things shifted to being online, but
Mhm.
how have you seen it coming out of it? Like obviously people are realizing, oh, they actually prefer working out in person, but would you say the numbers as to how many people are coming into your studio is going back to pre-pandemic times? Is it more? Is the
Yeah.
energy different?
It's a great question. I think everyone in the industry is trying to figure it out. My studio here is not a good indication of, where the average consumer is. It's a private studio, and it's really just my innovation lab and where I create and record and replicate programming, and so I have just test groups that are in here. So this studio wouldn't necessarily be an indication of the overall market, but I will tell you that before the pandemic hit, margins were even hard. They had gotten really thin in the
Mm-hmm.
fitness industry. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that consumer behavior changed from when I opened my first studio 30 years ago. People used to come to Pure Barre 5 days a week. Well, once they understood the value of
Mm-hmm.
kind of boutique fitness and leaving the big boxes, then they said we're seeing results, and they would come 5, 6 days. And then other boutique modalities started to enter the market, like, cycling, soul cycle, yoga, core power, all of them, which was great for the consumer because they're like, oh, well, now we have all these options, but really
Mm-hmm.
hard on the studio owner because the frequency went way down, right? So,
Yeah.
her customer that was coming 5 days a week was now only coming twice. And so it was tough. And, to operate a fitness studio got really expensive. The overhead went up, for marketing, for build out, all of that. And so before COVID, you were kind of battling that already, and then layer
Mhm.
in people discovering at home. And like I just mentioned, programming getting better at home, which is great. But now I think what we're seeing is this kind of fragmented consumer that likes to be in the studio maybe call it 3 times max a week, outside in nature doing a hike or a walk, and working out at home, a blend of all three, which I think is fantastic. But it's just now, how do the studios move forward and figure out how to be profitable with that model?
Yeah. Would you say platforms like ClassPass benefit your studio, or would you say it takes away? Because I feel like, at least when I've used ClassPass, I feel like you're not dedicated to one studio. You're kind of hopping around even more so.
Yeah, it's been really tough on studio owners. ClassPass, it's crushed a lot of people's margins, profits, and I would say that it's contributed to a good amount of studios closing.
Because I think like a lot of people are like, oh, if people are on this platform, they'll get exposure to my studio and see it. But I don't think it creates like a dedicated long-term customer.
Yeah, I think it's such a different perspective from the studio owner versus what the consumer sees, and if you do the math on it, you can figure out real quick that ClassPass is not a good thing for studio owners. Basically having to sell those discounted blocks, position, or, like a space in the room. And if you think about what a studio owner is paying a teacher to teach, and then figure out what they're paying, it's not, the margin's just not, it's not there.
So I'm sure you've been on social media and you've seen on specifically TikTok the era of the Pilates princess, and I'm giving up all my other workouts for Pilates, and how Pilates has changed my life. And I feel like everyone and their mother is talking about Pilates, and it's no longer like my little secret. I feel like as a dancer, we've always like known about it, but now like the general public has like found Pilates and they're just obsessed with it. So I'd love to know your take. Why do you think it's so hot right now?
So funny. I've never been on TikTok, so I didn't know about this whole Princess Pilates thing.
That's the whole thing.
This is happening to me in my life. Like yesterday, I was trying to figure out how to assemble this electronics thing, and I gave up. And I said to my husband, "I can't. Like, I just give up. Can you look at it?" He looked at it, and he was like, "This took me an hour." And he's like, "We're getting old. We can't figure this stuff out. We're gonna just have to start giving it to the kids." But anyway, so that's how I feel when we talk about social media, because TikTok is beyond me. But but yeah, it's interesting. As you just mentioned, I've known about Pilates, and what a jewel of a method it is, for a very long time. And I think a good amount of people have known about it. One reason it might be having a moment, if you will, is that a lot of the other workouts were able to be replicated at home during COVID, like yoga, bar, mat Pilates. But the reformer, which is where I see the most hype, right? Most people don't have a reformer at home and don't know what to do on it. And it's hard if you're at home, and a lot of reformer programming is done on your back, laying down, and you can't see like the screen. So I feel like that might be a reason why people are coming into the studios, and you're seeing more people come in for that reformer workout. I also have kind of a theory that the energy of the universe is just kind of blah right now. And so it seems more approachable to lie down on something and stand up. You're like, okay, I can lay down and do leg circles, but I don't know if I can jump on that plyo box, right? So like, so I think that there might be something there, although I would have no way of proving it. So maybe just people have enough energy to get to the reformer. And I think, the athletic programmings now, you're seeing it come into more and more reformers. And so, whereas people used to say, oh, you can't get a good workout in Pilates, I think that's shifting. The mega reformer, I met Sebastian Legree in the 90s. The mega reformer is nothing new. I just think it's definitely having its day, its moment. I think it'll be for a while. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's a great way to work out.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, what are your thoughts on like traditional Pilates reformer methods as opposed to like Legree on the Megaformer or Solid Core? I feel like obviously like I had the opportunity in high school to study like traditional theory and everything. So I know the difference, but most people just assume that it's the same when it's not. So what's your opinion on that?
I think that mega reformer doesn't really even like to be referred to as Pilates, right? It's just that the equipment resembles a reformer. So, but I mean, the training on it is, as you know, not traditional. That's not the traditional Pilates repertoire. I was trained in the 90s by Michelle Larson, who is extremely, my Pilates training is traditional, if you will, the X amount of exercises that's listed on that one pager. And so I think there's a place for it all. I'm not one to bash any sort of movement because one of my missions is really just to get people excited, or even not excited, but just get yourself moving every day. Like, I do believe that sitting is the smoking of our generation. And so if it's mega reformer that gets you going, go for it. If it's traditional Pilates, go for it. I think there's a place for all of it. The only thing I would say is and kind of the reformer work that we're doing here in 044 as well, which is heavier, not as heavy as a mega reformer. I feel like there's a spectrum, right? You have traditional Pilates, which doesn't go as heavy. You have mega reformer that's really heavy resistance, and then programming I've been creating is in the middle there, right? So the only thing I would say is that if you're going to jump into kind of a really heavy type of reformer program, heavy resistance, that you understand the form of it. That's all. I think if you have mind body awareness, and not every teacher is great, and there are some great teachers. So it just really, you just have to be, when you're pushing a heavier resistance load on the reformer, you have to be careful.
Yeah. I haven't done reformer in a really long time. I would love to. It's just so expensive. Definitely a luxury.
Well, that's why I started in 2001, because the only Pilates work you could get on the reformer was offered in privates. And it was $65 in 2001, $65 for a private Pilates session in Michigan. And I just thought, and I didn't have the equipment. And I thought, well, I have an attorney salary, and I can't, which wasn't huge, by the way, but it was and I'm like, I can't afford to go take a private lesson. And I also know that for results, you should be doing this at least 3 times a week. So I certainly don't have 65 times 3. So I'm going to buy 4 reformers. I'm going to charge $25 a class, and I'm going to do group reformer. And that's how I started. Like, nobody was doing group. I had not seen group reformer done yet. I only did it because I wanted people to be able to afford doing it 3 times a week.
Would you say, and like, how were people like acting towards that? Were they skeptical that like they wouldn't get the attention that they needed? Because like obviously reformer is very like specific in your form and how you're doing it. So were people skeptical to that, or they just wanted to experience it?
They weren't skeptical, because I think most people that came into my very first studio were coming out of group fitness in the big box. You're talking like 25, 30 people on steps. So for them, going from that to 4 people on a reformer, it was the opposite, right? All of a sudden they were getting way more attention. Even when, when I mentioned that we didn't teach teachers how to teach when I was in those big box gyms, like, we taught with our backs to the class. It's one of the first things I put into the training manual for Pure Barre was like, you have to face the people in the room. Because I would grapevine right and had no idea if anyone was following me, right? When I had my back to the group, I could see in the mirror, but like, so I think that I didn't experience that. Maybe if someone had been doing private work only and then gone into a group before, they would have felt that way. But a good teacher can absolutely manage 4 people on a reformer.
Being super busy can make it really easy to fall into a dinner time recipe rut, or even with your lunches. Any meal, honestly, can get you into a rut, especially with a busy schedule this fall. You can keep mealtime exciting with over 40 recipes to choose from every single week, so there's always something delicious to discover with HelloFresh. It's truly a no-brainer. It does all the shopping and meal planning for you. Ingredients arrive at your doorstep, pre-proportioned and ready to cook, along with pictured step-by-step recipe cards. It's never been easier. I personally love HelloFresh as a way to get exposure to new recipes, make my life a bit easier as a busy 20-year-old in the city. And I love that it's worry-free, it's super easy, it's convenient, and gets delivered straight to my door. Go to hellofresh.com/50ray and use code 50ray for 50% off plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/50RAE and use code 50ray 50RAE for 50% off plus free shipping. I feel like my list of things to buy, to do, activities that involve spending money is never ending around the holidays, making the idea of investing and saving and thinking about your future to be a little bit more challenging, a little bit more overwhelming. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for you, your kids, and your retirement, even during the holidays. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you. You don't need a ton of time. You can create your Acorns account and start automatically investing your money in just 5 minutes. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now. That could be $5 a day or even just your spare change. That's right. Acorns can round every purchase you make up to the dollar and automatically invest your spare change for you. And you can get bonus investments just for buying the stuff you need from the brands you love. I personally love Acorns. It's simplified the investment process, which can be overwhelming and intimidating, but it just makes it so simple, so easy, and something more accessible no matter how much money you have to invest. Head to acorns.com/Alana or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/Alana. I'm super excited about today's sponsor. They've sponsored the podcast before, and this is a topic I'm super passionate about. I fear that us as girls struggle with PMS far more than we should, and we really shouldn't. I truly get the worst PMS symptoms. My boobs are sensitive, my face breaks out, my sugar controllings are out of whack. I feel like I'm just a bottomless pit. My mood is not the vibe, and Estro Control has been super helpful in helping manage those PMS symptoms and making that time of the month a lot more enjoyable. Estro Control is a formula developed by Happy Mammoth, a supplement company dedicated to making women's lives easier. Say no more. Estro Control contains science-backed herbal extracts that help support hormonal health, especially if you are someone like myself who struggles with PMS. It was created to help women feel like themselves all month long and to not struggle with the feelings PMS can cause. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code Alana at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code Alana for 15% off today. Fresh is America's #1 meal kit, and thank you for sponsoring today's episode of Morning Ray.
This is the smell of the leftover tuna fish sandwich you left in your lunchbox over the weekend in a wimpy trash bag.
Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy!
Blech! And this is the smell of that same sandwich in a hefty, ultra-strong trash bag.
Hefty, hefty, hefty!
Ah, smell the difference? Hefty Ultra Strong has Arm & Hammer with continuous odor control, so no matter what's inside your trash, you can stay one step ahead of stinky. And for bigger jobs, try the superior strength of Hefty Large Black Bags.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Okay. I love that. I feel like the conversations, especially like among like my girlfriends or what I see online, is like everyone's like, oh, I want to tone. Like I just want to tone my muscles. But I know you focus more on like building strength. So I'd love to hear more about like that mentality and why it's important as women to not be fearful of being strong. Because I feel like society tells us, oh, you need to be like so little, take up less space. Like you want to be dainty. Like, so I'd love to hear more on that.
Yeah, I love that you just put that way. I hadn't thought that through in that way. But yes, I mean, listen, the industry's come a long way in a lot of good ways. So if I can take you back to when I first started, it was very masculine. Everything was protein shakes and bodybuilding competitions and bikini, the bikini things. I don't even know if they still go on.
They do.
They do. That was the world, right? Like when I wasn't teaching in the group fitness rooms, I was out there lifting weights in the weight room with all the guys that were, eating egg whites and to compete and getting spray tans. And that's true. And drinking metrics like the shakes. And so that's what we had. And so it's come a long, long way. But I do think it spent a long time and still does on this whole toning thing, which toning isn't bad, but I'd love to just shift. And although it might seem minor, but a shift towards from toning to strengthening, right? Because they signify different things. And not that, if you want flat abs, great, go for it, whatever motivates you. But strength is more important than tone. And I do think the industry for a long time, we've been into no weights or like 2 pounds. And there's always been this, what I've seen, fear of, well, I don't want to lift anything heavier because I'm going to get bulky. And that's just not true. It's really not. So I think we need to stop that. And I've seen, in this programming now, we use 15, 20 pound kettlebells. So we're not like benching 150, right? But we're throwing a 15, 20 pound kettlebell. And I think there's a happy medium. And I see women getting stronger so much faster, and no one's bulking. No one's bulking.
Yeah, it takes a lot. Like, if you want to bulk, sure, but like it's not going to happen from you picking up something slightly heavier. Like, there's a lot that goes into like becoming quote unquote bulky. Like, also, like, females don't build muscle the same way that men do. Like, it's different.
Yeah. And also we really start to lose it. We lose our muscle mass. And so what I found with my age is that I definitely need to push that heavier resistance just to maintain,
Yeah. I've like recently started, like, I do strength training a few times a week with a personal trainer. And then I do like my hot Pilates, which is like mat Pilates in an infrared room. And I also see like the beauty in cross training. Like, I think cross training is also super important. And like, it's good to like challenge yourself and do these different things.
Agree.
So, I'm a big wellness advocate, and I'm very much known for my morning routine. I love morning routines. I love sharing my morning routine. I love hearing about other people's morning routines. So, Carrie, I would love to hear about your morning routine because I'm sure it's very special, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, it might not be as wellness oriented as you think. I'm for my whole life, even before kids, I'm an early riser. So I have to force myself to stay in bed. I'll look at the clock and I'm like, no, you cannot get out yet. You cannot, right now I'm working on my brain because my brain, starts running as soon as my eyes open. And so I'm practicing this. I'm practicing this mantra that's kind of like I call it mind your mind, meaning like, I'm not going to listen to you. Like, you have to turn off because I'm in charge. And even though you're running, I'm not listening. And so I'm working on that when it happens, in the morning. But besides that, when I get up, I go outside right away and I right out the back door and just take a few deep breaths and look up at the sky and the stars. And I read that in a book years ago written by a monk, and I can't remember who, but he said that's a common practice among monks, is that they go out first thing in the morning and they breathe. So that's what I do. Sometimes I'll go through phases where I do a guided meditation. I did go through a phase where I try to do my own meditation out there, and I find my mind start to go already. So for me, it's either breath work in the morning outside or a short guided meditation, and then a really strong cup of coffee. And I let the dog out with my coffee. We have a puppy, so he's a little wild in the morning, but always, like, you talk about a way to get in a good mood right off the bat is to get a puppy. And then I get try to get a full hour of work done before anyone else in my house gets up. So I have 3 kids and a husband, and I get an hour before the chaos begins.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just think like morning routines are so special, and I'm very much an early riser too. And I grew up with my mother, who seems to be very much in alignment with you. Like, she literally will be up at 5 a.m. but forces herself to stay in bed a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I feel you. But I think it's important that you find the time to get up before the rest of your family, because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? It's really hard to give when you don't have anything to give. Why is wellness so important for you? Especially, like, I feel like our world is like constantly like speeding up. Like, we're constantly wanting like faster shipping, faster response times. Businesses need to grow faster. So why is wellness so important for you in your day-to-day life?
I think it started, I mean, as we've talked about, fitness has been just a pillar in my life for my whole life, because even before I started Pure Barre, I was half the time in the dance studio, half the time in soccer. So before even it was labeled fitness, it was fitness for me. It was just daily movement, and then leading it became really my purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
So that fitness pillar piece has been there a long time, and it wasn't until I was older that I started to really layer in the other pieces of well-being. Growing up in the Midwest in the 80s, like nutrition and organic, perhaps it was there, but I didn't see it, right? I didn't grow up with that. I grew up
Mm-hmm.
with canned raviolis and SpaghettiOs, and I don't even know if they still make those. It was SpaghettiOs with meatballs in there. But my parents did the best they can, and that's what they knew. That's what we knew, and that's what I did. So the nutrition piece didn't come until later. And then the lifestyle choices, I think after having kids, I really started to lean in and learn about, how to make lifestyle choices about, and how they impacted my well-being. And then in the environmental, planetary health has been the most recent piece to like what I think is important for overall well-being. But I did say, and it's built into this brand I'm launching. 044 Way is the brand, and the workout is the method. But I said I never really wanted to bring another concept to market that entailed fitness that didn't talk about well-being. And one of those drivers for me was that in all those years of meeting women and teaching women and studio owners and teachers and clients, I saw so many physically fit women, and I wouldn't categorize them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a disconnect. Everyone thought back then that if you were aesthetically, physically fit, then you must be mentally well, or
Mm-hmm.
you must be well. And it just wasn't true. So I think that's why that whole thing is really become a part of 044. And yeah, I think it's getting more challenging to be well in our modern world.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, thinking about how to raise my kids, that are, what tools can I teach them, because it's seemingly heading in a trajectory that's going to be more difficult for them.
Mm-hmm. As a parent, how do you encourage your children to lean into taking care of like their wellness in terms of like their mental and physical health? Because I feel like it's hard from a parent, because like your kids can be like pushed back a bit and like be like, oh, like mom's telling me to do this, like that's not cool, I don't want to do that. Or they could be receptive, but what have been like the strategies you've done to kind of encourage that and break the stigma around mental health?
Yeah. Well, I think leading by example is the most impactful for parents. So even if the kids are saying, yeah, that doesn't work for me, or I'm not going to do that, they're still seeing it. They're still
Mm-hmm.
absorbing you doing it, and they're learning it. And you never know when they're going to end up using a tool that you use. We talk about everything really openly in my house, even though my kids are young, they're 9, and 10, but I'll talk about like mom's experiencing feelings of anxiousness or anxiety right now, and this is how I'm handling it, and I'm struggling. Like I talk about them, not to like freak them out, not
Yeah.
too much for developmentally where they're at, but just to know that like this is a part of life. We can't expect to be happy all the time, and here's some tools that we can be thinking about using. Each of my girls have lists by their beds. Like one struggles with falling asleep. She gets anxious falling asleep. What we're supposed to be saying, feelings of anxiousness. I try really hard to not like categorize everything. Like if you say I'm anxious, well, you're not anxious all the time. You're just experiencing those feelings right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So she struggles there, and then my other daughter will have nightmares, and so we have a list of like, what do you do if you wake up in the middle of the night? I do my breathing, I look at something in my room that reminds me of someone I love, just like all these
Mm-hmm.
tools. So we talk about them, I practice them, and so far that's what we're doing. And as far as like the nutrition piece, we never fed them separate, like this is how mom and dad eat, this is how the kids eat, you order from
Mm-hmm.
the kids menu. I mean, that's a whole paradigm shift that needs to happen. But so they don't really know any other way, like this is how we eat, and they're not, they aren't denied any sort of food per se, but they learn, like, can I read the ingredient list, and how much processing has been done to what I'm eating,
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm going to have this piece of candy, should I have another one later?
Yeah.
About balancing it.
Yeah. I feel like my household was so different. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of like nutrition and all these things have been self-taught, and I'm like still very grateful that I had that. But growing up, like we had so many sweets in the house, and I was definitely such a picky eater. Like God bless my parents for coping with me, because until grade 12, I would not have chicken unless it was breaded and fried or baked. I wouldn't just have like fish. Like again, it had to be breaded. Like it had to be a chicken finger or a fish finger. I would only have pasta if it was like butter or like a simple tomato sauce. There couldn't be any vegetables on my pizza. Like that was my childhood.
Yes. I don't think you were alone. You know what happens is then like my husband, I've heard my husband say this before because he does most of our cooking, and he'll be like, "Oh, I wish my mom was still alive. I would apologize to her," because you don't realize what you put your parents through until you're cooking for your kids, right? So yeah.
Yeah, we had like a full like restaurant going on because like my mom has Crohn's, so then like she like has like her dietary restrictions, then I'm being Miss Picky over here, and then it's like my dad and my sister who like are a little less picky. Well, my dad's not picky, but my sister is less picky than me. So
yeah,
just a restaurant going on at home.
Yes, it's there's always something going on in the kitchen.
Yeah. Let me see. I feel like that those are all my questions. I feel like we had a really good conversation. I always like to end it off with you leaving one thing to leave the audience with. It can be a piece of advice, it can be a quote, it can be a resource, anything that you want to leave the listeners with if they didn't listen to anything else and you're just leaving them with this. No pressure.
Right? What would I leave listeners with? I think that my advice would be to simplify and do what's meaningful in life. I feel like we have a lot of undoing to do as a society. And I also feel like we've made being well and fulfilled really complicated. And so I'd almost argue that it's a going backwards, a stripping back, a peeling off in order to get to that place of peace. I think it's possible for all of us, not all the time, but I think to have a meaningful, joyful life, it takes a lot of undoing instead of adding to.
Yeah, I agree on that. I've been trying to do that, and I think I've been also seeing more of that on social media, and like just like slowing down, pulling back, simplify, and like even like just simplifying like clears your mind too, and it puts you in such a better headspace, and you're able to like go about life in such a better way. So I love that. And plug yourself out. Where can the listeners find you? Where can they find what you're up to?
Great. Yes. O44way.com. So it's an O, not a 0. And then that's the website. And that's the Instagram handle at O44way. The O is for Michelle Obama. And the 44 is in numerology means a business that was launched to help others.
I love that. I will have that all linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Carrie. It was an honor to have you on and to get to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Morning Ray. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. It was such a fun episode to record. If you did, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, as that's how you can help support the show. Also, make sure to subscribe or follow if you aren't already. I love you guys so much, and we'll chat soon. Bye, guys.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.